Hello everybody, and welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons! We have a letter from Serrano. How you doing, Touchdown? Couldn't help but notice you've been working mighty hard lately. The way I see it, you deserve a proper thank you, so send you a present. Try it on, try to relax a bit. You deserve it, kiddo. Nah, I really don't. But I'll accept the present anyway. What was that other thing? Okay, so I guess that's something we already had, and you gave us a pom-pom sweater. It's not really my thing. Yeah, I actually have a few things to kind of ramble/rant about today. One, just rambling, and the other, ranting. And I'm going to start with the ranting, so I can get that out of the way first. So, okay. The Canadian government, for a while now, has had a carbon tax. And to help offset the burden of said carbon tax on the everyday person, they had a rebate, basically. Where basically, once every 3 months, you'd be sent a flat sum of money based on where you lived. And by the Canadian government's own admission, 80% of Canadians got more back from the rebate than they spent in the extra emissions costs. But what it did do was it basically made it more expensive for the big industries, the ones doing the major amount of polluting from, you know, various carbon emissions. It's great. For me, it was about $130 every 3 months. Not a huge amount of money, but hey, it's $130. Yeah, they decided to stop doing that. They've just removed the carbon tax. Which is dumb, for one. And for two, that means that very likely I will not be able to afford a Switch 2. At least without saving until probably January of next year. Which is gonna suck. Because I was actually really looking forward to having one, you know, kinda close to when it released. I might have needed to wait till July, but, you know, it was fine. And then past July, I'd have money again. Yeah, I'm not gonna have money until January of next year, very likely. So that's fun. All because the government is basically listening to lunatics. I don't want to get terribly in on it because, while I am very much a believer that politics are only so divisive, I should say, because we don't talk about them, I also don't want to cause any major arguments. I physically do not think I could handle an argument at the moment. I'm kind of sick. I think it might just be like allergies. I don't know. I've taken some Buckleys anyway. Can't stop me. If I am actually sick, it'll nuke it out of me. If I'm not, well, it's something. Hey, Simon. How's it going, man? Yay, Steven! I was just thinking about how I wanted to see you. One chat. Weather's great today. Gonna lay down in the grass, talk to some bugs. It's very fair. Sounds like a pretty good day. Sounds like he's also just getting started on his day at 6 p.m. I feel that. Caroline! Peanut, glad to see you. Let's chat. Isn't it great the way everyone stops what they're doing to watch a sunset, Pinecone? I mean, I don't, but that's me. Hey, Ed. At least he's fishing, so he's not gonna talk much. Say about fishing, right? Please tell me, because I can't catch anything. Yeah, that's because you're not fishing where there's fish. What they say about fish is you gotta go where there's fish. But yeah, it's honestly just frustrating to me. And, like, it was basically done to appease one of the other large political parties. Like, it was done for no other reason. And this other large political party just so happens to not really care what happens to the regular person, yet the regular person seems very interested in them being in power. And I honestly don't understand that at all. For anyone watching this who is Canadian, an election coming up pretty soon. Be sure to get out and vote. Normally I wouldn't, because I'm like that, but given one of the political parties is basically run by a Trump wannabe, yeah, no, I'd rather do everything I can possibly do to prevent us from becoming America. Our country was founded to not be America. Nothing against Americans, but that's just the history of this country. Like, a candle. Like, for those who don't know that, literally, that's why Canada is a thing. Like, as its own standalone thing anyways, because we didn't want to be part of the United States. Which is what makes this whole 51st state crap, which it wouldn't be that, because you are not going to get a country the size of Canada to be one state. I'm sorry, Donald Dump. It ain't gonna happen. I'll stop rambling about that now, though. But yes, the other thing that I can kind of talk about is I gave in and bit the bullet and re-downloaded EVE Online finally. After basically being like, man, I missed that game for a while. And man, have so many things changed. And not for the better in a lot of cases. Like, your inventory when out in space. It's something I would in general just leave open all the time. Also, I do apologize if I'm a little gassy. My tummy is not completely happy. Like the inventory, that I myself just leave open all the time because I like to know on the fly how much ammo I still have with me. You know, when flying in space used to show you your cargo capacity as a number. And it had everything in a nice compact little view, everything made sense, it worked. And then they went and screwed with that at some point while I wasn't playing. And, you can still get the old view back for the most part by using the compact view, but the problem is the compact view trains out where it used to tell you a number of, you know, how many meters cubed your cargo hold is full. It's now just a bar, and you have to hover over that to see how much space you have left. Yeah, that's not better, CCP. That is worse. I'm very much in the mindset, and this applies to literally everything. If you are going to do a visual upgrade to anything, it should actually be an upgrade. Like, are all of the functions still there? Does it still function exactly as it did before, as easily as it did before? If the answer is no, then you shouldn't be doing it. I see glowy. Also, prices for stuff have gotten absolutely ludicrous in some ways. Like, Plex, Game Time. Like, Omega Time, I should say, because it's not exactly Game Time, there's 3 accounts. Is now roughly 3 billion ISK. When I stopped playing, it had just gotten to about 1.2 billion. And it seemed like it was going to stabilize there. It did not stabilize there. When I started playing, it was like 300 mil. And if I had known how to make ISK then, like I do now, boy, I'd probably still be running Game Time from back then. Whoever lifted this, I was pumping iron, super sweaty, when I slipped in a DIY idea and a weight slammed into my head. I got so excited I couldn't even work out, so I wrote this letter. Now we're secret DIY buds. Swolecrafter Drift. Bamboo wall decoration. I already know how to do that. They got a concussion just for a recipe I already know. Such a shame. There's also some new ships. There's not many, but there's some. It's rather neat. Like, I remember there being some faction battlecruisers, but not 2 faction battlecruisers per faction, which is pretty nice. But you had it over when you smelled what I'm prepping, didn't you? Curious about what it is? I am. Right now I'm prepping some Carpaccio di Capacente recipes from this so-called influencer that I'm totally not jealous of. I decided to put my own spin on. Want my recipe yet? Of course. I always like a new recipe. I already have that recipe. Yeah, like, it does feel nice being back in that game. There's a lot of little things I need to reset up for myself. Like, my overview is not what I remember it being. It's close, because I always just kind of rocked with more or less the default. I just modified the default. And they've changed the default, which is the problem. There's things in some of the tabs that should be there but aren't. And there's some things that shouldn't be there that are. And it's taken me a while to get everything sorted. Like, for now, I still have suns on my my main tab of my overview. That's gonna go. I'm very particular with my general tab for my overview in EVE. Like, a lot of people like having the sun there. That's because a lot of people... I did not mean to do that. And I got 8,000 bells. Great job, me. A lot of people will panic warp to the sun whenever there's, like... They run into an issue, they need to get away. But that's the thing. People panic warp to the sun, so that's one of the first places that, you know, assuming whoever was just attacking you didn't see where you fled to, that's where they're gonna look first. Because you can see what direction someone warped off. So if you see them warping in the direction of the sun, oh, they're going to the sun. Probably at 100 kilometers. So you do the same and ta-da, you're on top of them again. Especially if your ship warps faster than theirs. Like, you might pass them in warp, you know. So, like, my go-to thing is usually moons. Especially these days, because there's no point really having a POS anywhere. I believe I explained this before, but POSs are... it's a shorthand for player-owned station. They're basically little control towers that used to be the player's way of having their own little space station. They had a nice big bubble shield. You could deploy turrets around the outside of them. You could put little, like, ore reprocessors and compressors and things like that inside the shield. Ship storage. Basically, like, used to be, like, little home away from home frontline base kind of thing. Nice running into you, Snorty. I want to chat. Struggling to come up with a last-minute dinner plan, Snorty. Aw. Pasta's always a good option for last minute. Yeah, they basically removed all of these little structures that POSs have. The structures still exist, they just don't do anything anymore. So they're just collector's items now. Even a POS is more or less just a collector's item now. Because there's not a huge amount of point in having one. Hey, Steven, nice of you to visit, Qua. Let's chat. you happen to notice a really good smell the other day? 'Cause I sure did. Wanna know what it was? It was a lily that Gala had. The smell was so calming and gentle, like the whole world's most delicate cheese puff. I had to have one. Cheese puff, I mean, not a lily. Quah. I mean, lilies are pretty good. I think I've said that exact thing before. I don't know. Like, that was a big controversy when CCP did that, and I'm still frustrated. So, POSs used to be how small corporations would move into, say, low security space, or nullsec. Like, NPC nullsec, that's how you moved into it, was you set up a POS, and you more or less just hoped that other groups didn't come and knock over your sandcastle. But if they did, well, you could start with a small POS. That's maybe a 200 mil investment, all things together. For an entire corporation moving around, that worked. That was fine. Gave you a staging area, you know, gave you a safety zone. This isn't a terribly great one, but it was a safety zone. Yo, touchdown, feeling strong, cardio? Let's talk. Feel that sunshine. It's time to get sweaty, cardio. Yeah, I'd rather not. Not today. I went for a walk yesterday. It's probably why I'm feeling so crap today. Because spring. But, they replaced the POS with the Citadel. Now, the thing with that was they basically advertised it as, well, the Citadel will be able to do everything a POS can do. If a POS can do it, a Citadel can do it. Except for moon reactions. Except ore reprocessing. Or compression, can't do that either. It can kind of do industry stuff, but not very well. And it's like, okay, CCP, what is even the point of this? You're removing all of these abilities and giving us this junky structure. And the response there was, we have more of them planned. There's gonna be refineries, there's gonna be this, there's gonna be that. It's like, okay, all of this stuff was done via the POS before. Why is it being split into a ton of other structures? And are they at least going to be cheap? And CCP's response there was, oh yeah, it'll be cheap. It'll be about $1 billion-isk for the smallest size of Citadel. Something that can do a fraction of what a POS used to do is going to cost more than the largest size of pirate faction POS. Why would we want this? It's like, oh, it's because we're going to be taking away the ability for a POS to do any of this stuff. It's like, so you're literally just making the game worse. For what reason? Oh, well, Citadels are easier to blow up. Okay. POSs are pretty easy to blow up too, like... And honestly, between the two, a POS is easier to blow up because there's fewer reinforced timers. Because basically how combat works in EVE is, I will come back for CJ, as I probably don't have the inventory for fishing. Like, how, like, structure combat works in EVE is you, like, let's say a Citadel. You come across a Citadel, you and your buddies want to blow up. Cool. If it's in high sec, you declare war. If it's low sec, you just shoot it. Either way, it has 3 health bars. Shield, armor, and hull. Everything has those health bars. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling this one. Oh, hey, it's Gala's shirt. Because of the dress. Is that ant? It says imp. That's an ant. I know an ant when I see one. That's an ant hood. Being an ant. So, you start shooting away at the Citadel. You get through its shields. It then enters a reinforced stage, where it now goes on a 24-hour timer. Label tells me you've been helping her out, modeling outfits and such. Means a lot to all of us. You do so much for our little family. Thanks so much, Steven. You're very welcome. So it goes on a 24-hour reinforced period where it can no longer take damage for 24 hours. You've got to come back tomorrow to shoot it again. I think it's actually 20 hours. It used to be you could set when your structures would go on reinforce. They eventually changed that because Australian corporations and alliances ended up being some of the strongest in-game because they could muster the most players during their time zone. So, literally, their structures could almost never die because they were always just the most plentiful players online whenever... whenever, like, they were attacked, like, for their reinforced timers. But then you come back tomorrow. You get through the armor. It then goes on reinforce again. With a pause, you showed up, you shot the shield. Once the shield reached no health, it goes on reinforce. You've got to come back tomorrow. And it would be like 15% of the shield left. That way the defenders had some shield. Like, you didn't knock out their shield and could just blow up everything. There also wasn't a DPS limit on how much damage you could deal to a boss. There is on Citadels. Bosses are really a lot easier to kill. Like, a lot easier. But that was one of CCP's arguments. Well, Citadels will be easier to kill. And in CCP's opinion, they would help smaller corporations get started easier. Because, well, it's a whole station. Except it's not. Because you can only have so many services on one structure. And it's a billion ISK of resources as opposed to... I mean, a small POS could be bought for 80 mil. The other components might run you 20 to 40 mil each to get the most basic, you know, here's a tower and, you know, a corp hanger. You were looking at like 120 mil. And that would give you a bridgehead. That would give you, like, somewhere you could stage out of. It was great. You can't do that anymore. I don't even think you can deploy POSs anymore. Like, mostly I say that because there's now other things that get placed at moons, which is where POSs used to be placed. I'd honestly have to explore around and see, because, well... It's just... It's sad, man. I liked my POS. I had just a generic large Amarian POS and a medium Sanchez POS. The faction, so Sanchez, that's a pirate faction. The pirate faction POSs had basically more room to put things in them, so that medium one was almost as good as the large Amarian one, and I managed to get that Sancha POS for less than the person thought they were selling it for. EVE Online's a game all about scamming. Well, it's not all about scamming, but scamming is heavily encouraged. So, you know your boy's gotta do that. I'll sell the sticks too. But, yeah, these days that POS is probably worth like 1.5 billion just because it's a collector's item at this point. I'm not selling it because it's a collector's item at this point. I'll sell other things, but the POS has more sentimental value to me. So, like, I don't want to get rid of it. Like, there's some things that, like, I could probably, like, sell on my character and probably, like, make billions. But those things hold quite the sentimental value to me. Like, everything about my corporation's moon mining setup, which is what we used our POSs for. Like... Yeah, I'll take on your challenge, CJ. What do you got? 3 big time. Alright. So I'm going to the beach. So, like, all of that stuff I've still got, and I'm never getting rid of. Like, that was the peak for my corporation. Like, that was when we were at our best. We had a fully funded ship replacement program. Like, we had like 50 to 60 active members. We were living out of Providence, but doing our moon reactions in a little corner of Losec that we could do them in, that, like, it worked really well. And then everything kind of fell apart, and also, you know, the POS changes meant that moon mining didn't work anymore. It also means that some things that existed specifically to interact with POSes do not work anymore. Like, there was a little deployable siphon thing you could buy that you could deploy next to somebody's POS, and it would steal resources from that POS. Like, it was specifically for ones that were, like, drilling from the moon. Like, you could literally steal some of what they were pulling up. And, like, I use those things mostly to troll other groups in that little Losec area, as well as making a tidy little profit, because, like, all of the best moons were obviously held. Like, that's... By the time we got there, this little Losec corridor had already been basically claimed on all the best moons. But what that meant was that, you know, our structures being put up at these basically low-value moons didn't bother anybody because, like, who cares? There's nothing there. And then, I could go around and basically steal some of the high-value stuff. And as long as they didn't notice the thing there too quickly, I would make off with more ISK in stealing from these other towers than the cost of the siphon, so I could buy a new one and then in a week or two put it back. You know? It was great. I loved doing that, but you can't do that anymore. All of that stuff is done, like, moon mining is now done by, basically, you get your refinery, your big moon mining refinery. You fit it with a moon drilling laser, because you don't have to fit it with one of these. It doesn't come with one. You have to buy that module separate, even though that's basically the only purpose of this structure. It does other things too, but that's the biggest purpose of the structure, is moon mining. You then point it at the moon that it's sitting by, and it has to be in a specific spot around the moon. So there can only be one of these structures at any moon. You then set a timer for how long it drills the moon for to pull up resources, and then once it pulls up the big rock of resource, it then fires the laser, which smashes the rock, and then you've got to mine the resources with mining ships. It's no longer automatic. The reason that CCP gave for this, after so many years of the big nullsec alliances passively generating trillions of ISK, was because they wanted to make it more fair for the little guy. And because of these big groups being able to pull in trillions of ISK passively without doing anything, that meant that they had to make it so that the little guy can't do that either. Widening the gap between the big guys and the little guys, because the small corporations now can no longer do moon reactions to basically muscle in on the markets that these larger alliances are trying to rule. And because they made it very much more of a team-based effort, you can't really do moon reactions or moon mining on your own anymore. That just made the gap even larger between small groups and the large groups, and the large groups, from everything I can figure, had literally zero issue transitioning. while the smaller groups, a lot of them just kind of died off and their members moved off into bigger groups because you really can't do moon mining on your own, and that's still where you get some of the best income, is moon mining and reactions. Like, and like there are a few like Freeport citadels that you can do reactions in at least. But even those ones, like, maybe this is just me, EVE player, been at this for a very long time. I don't trust them because they get a pretty good idea of the size of order you're putting in reaction-wise based on basically the tax they can put on what you're doing. So at least what I would do if I was one of these owners, I would wait to see somebody doing a massive order for a reaction. Like, let's say, you know, they're doing something in the realm of like 10 to 20 billion ISK worth of reactions. And then I would revoke their access to the Citadel. And basically tell them, yeah, you want this? Pay up. You now need to buy a permit to dock at my Citadel. And I'm thinking the price will be about 800 million ISK per month. That way they basically have to pay that 800 mil to get in and get their reaction and then go find another Citadel that, you know, given how wealthy a lot of these groups are, could very easily be owned by the same people who could just let that same thing happen again until, you know, someone doing that big of a reaction probably owns their own thing. So, you know, well, I say that. There's no guarantee. Like, I could do probably a reaction on that scale, but I don't own one. My corporation isn't big enough to own one, so... Well, I mean, it is, but there's not enough active members to defend it, is more what I'm getting at. Alright, we got all these fish. 14,000. So I'm feeling 14,000. 14,000! I'll take it. I was right on, basically. I mean, 400 off, but we round here. And that would round down. You got some Nook Miles stuff. Probably just daily things. Yeah, just daily things. But, like... It's... The whole thing around Citadel still bothers me, and they've been in-game for so long. Like... If CCP had just come out and said, yeah, we're doing this because the big alliances on the CSM basically want to secure their place even better, and this is more or less their idea, because that's kind of come out in the years since, that Citadels were more or less a concept created by the CSM to basically widen the power gap. With the argument being made to CCP that, well, you know, Citadels being larger and more expensive would basically cause larger battles, except they haven't. Mostly because, like, a lot of these structures don't matter. Like, okay, 1 billion ISK is a lot. That's a lot of ISK. To me. That's like... You know, that's a carrier. That's my Marauder. That's, you know, actually I think my Marauder's like 2-3 billion at this point. But still, you know, that's really expensive. To Joe Blow over there, who's been part of, say, Goon Swarm for 10 years, actively farming all of the best farming methods that entire time, 1 billion ISK is nothing. They're probably sitting on multiple trillions of ISK. Probably tens to hundreds of trillions of ISK on their individual character. the Alliance itself is probably sitting on quadrillions of ISK. You know. So, a structure that costs $1 billion, that's nothing. I mean, it's more than the, like, 80 mil that a POS used to be, but it's still nothing. You know, because that's just how the economy works. And it just really sucks that, effectively, EVE Online has kind of turned into real-life capitalism, where the rich and powerful are making all the rules to make it harder for the non-rich and powerful to become rich and powerful. Like, these days, especially just given how, and I will fully admit that a lot of these big alliances have skilled players in them. You really, like, we're never gonna see another group like a Rooks and Kings. They used to be a relatively small group. I think they had like 80, maybe 100 members at their like peak of like individual members. They had alts and could field fleets that were a little bigger than that, but wasn't by much. They usually roamed in 20 to 30 person gangs. And they used to fly flashy ships to basically make up for their numerical disadvantage they would be under. They would fly expensive ships that, like, they could, you know, basically be fairly confident they weren't gonna lose. The wealth of Nullsec got to the point where Rooks and Kings basically could not win any longer. Because, you know, for them, flying an entire fleet of carriers, this was back when carriers were the capital logistics, carriers being a capital ship, flying a fleet of 20, 30 carriers, that used to be a scary sight. The wealth of Nullsec has reached a point where that's nothing. Like, they could, you know, Goonswarm could, if you entered their space with a fleet of 30 to 40 carriers, they would probably respond to you with a fleet of 50 to 80 Titans, which are the biggest ship in the game. With also probably a few hundred support ships of smaller capitals. Probably super carriers. And, you know, that's just how the game's evolved, because no one's losing their toys anymore. Like, you don't really see capital ships dying all that often, because no one wants to field them, for one, just because of how the economy has gotten. And, like, there is a real thing of... It's something I've poked out a lot, and people very much kind of got frustrated with me pointing this out. Me buying a ship, let's say, 5,600. 5,900. I was 300 off. I was actually going to say 6,000. I should have just said 6,000. Like, say you buy a ship from me. And say I went out and mined all of the resources to make that ship. So I spent only the NPC tax to build that ship. I made that ship for maybe, you know, let's say it's a cruiser, I spent maybe 20,000 ISK. You just bought it from me for 14 million. So, you go and lose that ship, it's only the raw materials that are gone. All that ISK you just spent buying the ship from me, I still have that. That ISK doesn't magically vanish because your ship did. Like, which is how EVE got into the place it's at now, where a single bout of 30 days of game time being bought in-game is 3 billion ISK. Because 3 billion probably is actually not that much. I mean, honestly, with how even I used to play, I would pull in nearly 2-3 billion ISK a month just running level 4 missions. Like, and that was basically just because I set myself the goal of, right, I will pull in 100 million ISK per day. That is my goal. I did not generate all of that ISK. Some of that ISK I would get would be from selling faction ships I would build. But the missions I was doing was to get loyalty points to build those ships. So, you know. Actually, no, I think I'm kind of done fishing for now. Yeah, expect me to probably ramble a lot about EVE lately. Well, for a while. I will say, kind of late in this, there's going to probably be an extra video this Sunday. Because that's like the only day I can do it without interrupting things. It's a video I've been wanting to make for a while. It's the one I had my friend watching over to, like, basically make sure it's good before I post it. And, they agreed it's well done, so. I will be, probably uploading it this Sunday. I just need to, like, I need to get a thumbnail made, because YouTube's auto-generated thumbnails are not gonna work for me. I honestly might just do thumbnail of black with text. Like, that might just be what I do. Because it's gonna be a bit of a heavy video, but... like I said, it's one I've been wanting to make, so... Ed wants something. What's up, man? Wanna hear something amazing? You're moving away? Found the bunny day bag recipe. Actually, now that I think about it, it's totally believable that I'd have found something so awesome. Of course, I thought of you almost right after I finished congratulating myself for discovering it. I mean, alright, man. I was really hoping you'd be moving, but, you know. I mean, I've been gathering eggs. Actually, I should do that. I should, bonk our, coconut trees. I don't know if bees can be in these. But, like... even now, like, going back playing the game, I'm still doing missions, because I just enjoy doing them. I'm trying to find a ship that I enjoy playing to do level 3s in. Like, that's the biggest hurdle I'm hitting. Like, yep, because my little axe. I'm gonna leave those there just so I can remember that's the one I was bonking away at. As I come buy a new axe. I really wish you could buy the upgraded stone axe, but you can't. It's fine, though. Like... I'm actually kind of considering... I've got a few things on the market that, if they sell, I'm probably going to, even though it's a really bad investment... Oh, it ain't touchdown. Didn't think I'd run into you here. Kinda caught me off guard. Let's talk, man. Map here changes pretty much every day, so I feel like I gotta come back and check it out. Even if I don't want to. Yeah, there always might be something you want. Like, I'm kinda considering those board games, not gonna lie. I do like me a good board game. But, like, I kind of want to buy one of the new faction, battlecruisers. Just because, like, okay, one of my favorite ships, partially just because of how dumb it looks, is the Prophecy. It's a drone boat, basically. As in, it launches drones, it fights with drones. It has no built-in weapon bonuses. At all. Like, it's an Amarian ship, but you do not put lasers on it, because putting lasers on it just is a waste of time. You're getting no bonus for putting them on, So what most people, and myself included, do is put, usually, Minmatar artillery on it. That way you have a good long-range, just alpha strike hit. Or they'll put, like, small autocannons for dealing with anything really small that gets in right next to your ship that you may not want to use your drones on, because the NPCs will shoot your drones. Which is a change that I really wish that they would go harder on, but, you know. So, it's there. The Navy Prophecy has some drone bonuses, but it also has bonuses to lasers, meaning you actually have incentive to use lasers on your Amarian ship, which is what the Amarians are all about, is their lasers going pew-pew. Which also reminds me of the many times over the years, because I'm such a dork, and other people I know are also dorks, that the argument discussion has come up of basically what universe would win in a fight, EVE Online or Star Trek. And I think every time this argument has come up, like, the person I usually, like, debate, argue with is always in the camp of, like, well, if nothing else, the Borg would always win. And it's like, nah, not so sure about that. Because, like, for one, like, one of the arguments that tends to be used, and I've seen this from many people, not just the person I tend to get into this little debate with, the argument is like, well, the Amarians would be helpless because they have lasers. And it's like, alright, where's your proof here? It's like, well, in one episode of I think it was like Voyager, they encounter a... No, it wasn't Voyager, it was The Next Generation. They encounter a race that's shooting lasers at the Enterprise, and basically they just laugh it off and it does nothing. And it's like, okay. Counterpoint to that, the weapon the Borg used to rip a chunk out of the Enterprise effortlessly was described as a laser. So there's clearly levels to lasers. They're not just one thing. They are, you know, they're a spectrum of things. And one could argue that a phaser is just a really strong laser, or just a different type of laser. Especially given early shows, the phasers were at times described as lasers. The basic difference between a phaser and a laser is the phaser is using physical particles, while a laser is using light particles. Like, that's the big difference. Like, that's about as far as it goes. So, like, we don't know how a Starfleet vessel, or any ship in the Star Trek universe, would react to being hit by an Amarian laser, because, well, we don't know the exact specifications of the Borg laser that cut a hole in the Enterprise. Much like a surgeon cuts a small hole, the Borg cut a small hole in the Enterprise to take out, to examine, and study. Like, okay, I think one of those went behind the tree, maybe? Oh, that was one of the eggs is just gone now. No, one behind the tree, okay. But even past that, like, we know from dialogue, antimatter is a very dangerous thing in the Star Trek universe. The Galante and Caldari have weaponized antimatter It's their close-range ammunition from their blasters and railguns. Is a charge, you know, a shot from their gun that is quite literally made of antimatter. Ah, Steven, now that you're here, maybe you can help me out with a problem. Get carried away buying some round frame glasses. Wasn't sure what to do with my surplus, so I thought I'd gift you what I don't need. Aww. I guess I'll put those on. I will put them on right away. Bam. I don't mind round frames. So, like, you know. And then there's the argument of, oh, well, the Minmatar definitely would be helpless, right? It's like, well, not necessarily. So, the Minmatar use basically just giant guns. Like, their cruiser artillery pieces are 650 and 720 millimeter howitzers. Like, they're just big artillery pieces. And the argument there is, well, ships have a way of basically just, you know, that's what the deflector dish is for, is knocking away debris in space, which is basically kinetic weapons. The problem with that comes in that, one, photon torpedoes are a kinetic weapon. They are literally a kinetic weapon. They are a physical torpedo that is loaded into a launcher on the ship and then fired. So, clearly kinetic weapons can get past the deflector. But two, we also don't know the exact speed, size, what a deflector is capable of deflecting. Because let's be honest, I don't think Starfleet will have designed their deflector to block autocannon fire. Because, well, let's be real, no one in the Star Trek universe uses autocannons. Which is one of the big arguments I've seen as to why the EVE groups would struggle, is because, well, no one in the universe uses their weaponry. It's like, okay, but, counterpoint, no one in EVE uses Star Trek weapons either, and there's no guaranteed way of saying which one is actually more technologically advanced. So, you know, by pure year count, the EVE Online universe is ahead of the Star Trek universe. So one could assume the EVE Online universe has probably more advanced technology, and in a lot of ways they do. Like, the device that allows EVE Online ships to go to warp is called a PEG. P-E-G. I forget what that stands for, but it stands for something. So, there is no warp engine. Like, they don't need a warp engine. They just have their PEG. Okay, I'll take that as a sign to just go buy a new axe and sell the fruit I've got. You know, I might as well shake these trees and sell this fruit too. Especially where this video is, like, going on, like, what, 50-ish minutes? 52, 53? Somewhere in there. It's getting pretty long. And I'm probably rambling about things that none of you care about. Like, you can probably tell I am pretty firmly in the camp of, if nothing else, the EVE universe would give the Star Trek universe a run for its money. Especially because I'll get back to what I was making mention of there's no guarantee the Borg would win, of the Borg can adapt to your weapon. That's what they do. The Borg can't adapt to you punching them in the face. And what is a, you know, let's say 1400 millimeter howitzer shell other than a ship-sized punch to the face? the Borg wouldn't be able to adapt to Minmatar weaponry. It would literally be a case of the phrase that Minmatar pilots are very fond of in Rust we trust. Because the Borg wouldn't be able to adapt to it, and visually I doubt the Borg would see a Minmatar vessel, without scanning it at least, and even remotely consider it a threat. Mini cactus set, it really grabbing me. Yeah, I feel that. I'm after these board games. Okay, they're model kits. They look like board games. I'll still buy them. Model kits are pretty cool. So, like, the Borg would lose to the Matari. Like, they just would. Like, the Minmatar would just win. And any faction with a drone bay could load Minmatar drones and have basically a defense against the Borg that the Borg cannot win against. And using drones for this would be probably the most beneficial way of fighting the Borg, because they're not going to gain anything spectacular technology-wise from a drone. Drones do not have pegs. Drones cannot go to warp. Drones have a very limited control range. You know, there's so much about drones that make them very antiquated and not very good, that make them the perfect weapon for using against an entity like the Borg that want to assimilate your technology. Sneeze. So, like, you know, the Borg could assimilate a warrior, but what good's that gonna do them? They're just gonna find out the same things they already know. It might help them with their shield technology a bit, because that is one thing with the Star Trek universe. Physical objects can pass through shields. That's why they have deflectors. Which does mean, just to start, that the Star Trek shield technology is worse than EVE Online shield technology, because physical objects cannot just phase through your shield. Plus, you can basically transfer things up to 2.5 kilometers through your shields in the Star Trek in the EVE Online universe, and you cannot transport through a shield in the Star Trek universe. So that right there is one pretty big difference. But yeah, I'm going to stop rambling here, because I could probably sit here and ramble about this forever. Honestly, if there is any, like, Star Trek fans that want to, like, debate with me around this, I would be glad to bring my knowledge of EVE to, like, try to figure out... It'd still be very fandom-based, but, you know, try to figure out more empirically which side it actually would have an advantage. I will say one thing that I would have to add in, just because they do exist in EVE, you have to consider them, is Capsuleers, the players. Immortal, endlessly replacing gods, basically. Like, my character, my Capsuleer, can pilot a Titan, you know, a Titan, a literal ship larger than Earth's space dock, by himself, with no crew, at full efficiency. So, like, you've got to keep that in mind when comparing the universes. But I would also say Capsuleers probably would not give two craps about fighting the Star Trek universe, because there'd be nothing profitable about it, and that's generally what Capsuleers care about. There'd be more profit in making friends with the Star Trek universe than fighting them. It would be the major empires that would be more likely to declare war and fight them. The Amarians would probably see them as heretics that need to burn. The Minmatar would probably see them as a lot of the factions as elitists and not any better than the Amarians. The Caldarian Galante would probably initially try trade, and then once they felt slighted, would probably go to war. You know, so it'd definitely be the Amarians definite would be the ones to fight, but I could see the other factions getting involved too. But yeah, enough rambling. Thank you all very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you back here tomorrow for more Animal Crossing New Horizons. See you all then! And now in this end card, I'd like to ask, if you liked the video, could you maybe hit the like button? And if you're not subscribed, could you maybe subscribe? It'd help me out a lot. Thanks a bunch.